Have you ever wondered if there is a place on Earth where people are forced to live among mountains of garbage, without proper clothes, surrounded by suffocating stench and thick clouds of toxic smoke, as if trapped inside an apocalyptic movie? Imagine a morning in Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, where the sun rises but its light cannot break through the dense gray smog. Car horns blare like death knells. Children's coughs echo in the streets, while the rotten smell of decaying waste blends with the black smoke rising from aging factories. This is not a scene crafted by science fiction. This is the everyday reality of more than 23 million people whose very breath has become a battle for survival. Here, life persists in the shadow of towering trash heaps, along rivers that once sustained thousands but are now reduced to lifeless, toxic currents, and inside fragile shanties that could collapse with a single storm. Dhaka, once hailed as the beating heart of Bangladesh, is now infamous as one of the most polluted and impoverished cities in the world. How did the lifeline of a nation turn into a symbol of decay? What transformed a river that once nourished entire neighborhoods into a poisoned graveyard? And why do millions of families endure existence in sprawling slums, where even a roof over their heads is never guaranteed? These are the haunting questions this documentary will attempt to answer. Today, Fascinating Discoveries invites you on an unflinching journey inside Bangladesh's dirty and impoverished reality. A place where sunlight no longer represents hope, but instead exposes the harsh canvas of poverty, pollution, and despair. Yet, amidst this darkness, there remains an unyielding resilience. People who, buried under filth and hardship, still cling to life and fight to endure one more day. Brace yourself for a journey that will be uncomfortable but essential, because only by confronting these raw truths can we begin to understand the full complexity of our world. And now, let us begin where the story is most visible: the garbage-filled streets, where every step unveils the grim portrait of humanity's forgotten struggle. Number 1. Waste, when a city becomes a giant landfill. Can you imagine a capital city coexisting with garbage every single day, as if trash itself had become the walls that surround its existence? In Dhaka, more than 6,500 tons of solid waste are produced daily, yet more than half of it is never collected. Instead, it is dumped directly into canals, poured into drains, or piled high on the streets, forming mountains of garbage that sometimes rise taller than rooftops. Step into the city's narrow alleys, and you enter a terrifying labyrinth. Sidewalks have vanished, replaced by torn plastic bags, rotting food, animal dung, and streams of thick black liquid oozing from broken sacks of trash. The stench hits you like a punch, clinging to your clothes, seeping into your hair, forcing bus passengers to cover their faces, some even vomiting from the suffocating odor. But this is more than an inconvenience. It is a ticking time bomb of public health. Every puddle of dirty water is a breeding ground for mosquitoes, flies, and bacteria, silently spreading disease through the veins of the city. Many say Dhaka is not only buried under garbage, but imprisoned by its own inability to manage it. Weak waste collection systems, limited budgets, and uncontrolled urban expansion mean the city is always one step behind its own chaos. Trash here is not just an eyesore, it is a death sentence suspended over the lives of millions. What is even more frightening is how normal this has become. Residents have grown accustomed to living alongside waste, as if it were an eternal neighbor that will never go away. And that familiarity is perhaps the most dangerous part, because when habit replaces resistance, deadly problems spread in silence. Yet this is only the surface of the iceberg of pollution. If trash has turned the streets into sprawling landfills, then imagine what happens when it flows into the city's rivers, the very lifelines that once sustained Dhaka. From here, our journey leads us to the next devastating discovery. The Buriganga River, once the lifeblood of this city, now reduced to a biologically dead stream. Number 2. Buriganga River, from lifeline to a dead river. Can you imagine a river once celebrated as the lifeblood of a city now reeking of death? The Buriganga River, once hailed as the heart of Dhaka, was a source of drinking water, an abundance of fish, and memories of a thriving river culture. But today, standing on its banks, you see nothing but a thick black current, shimmering with oil slicks, where the waves no longer carry the rhythm of life, but the stench of decay. Every single day, tons of untreated wastewater from tanneries, textile dyeing factories, and industrial workshops pour directly into its waters. A river that once nourished generations has been turned into a massive graveyard of chemicals and industrial waste. Fishermen who once depended on the Buriganga have been forced to abandon their nets and leave behind their ancestral way of life. Instead of boats brimming with fish, they now push rusty carts along the riverbanks, trying to scrape together a living from selling small goods. Scientists now call it a biologically dead river. No fish can survive here. No weeds or aquatic plants can endure its poisoned depths. The death of the Buriganga mirrors the fate of Dhaka itself. A city once full of vitality, now suffocated by pollution and neglect. It is a bitter irony that a river once celebrated as a national pride, deeply woven into the collective memory of the Bangladeshi people, has become an environmental scar so severe that many prefer to turn away. Yet the black waters do not only swallow fish and ecosystems, they also swallow culture, heritage, and the continuity of community life. And as the Buriganga is reduced to a river of death, one cannot help but wonder, what will happen when Bangladesh's other rivers, more than 220 waterways that sustain an entire nation, face the same grim fate? Let us go deeper now, to hear the stories of those forced to live beside this rotting waterway, where life once thrived, but now lingers only as a fading echo of memory. Number 3. Air, breathing as if smoking cigarettes. Can you believe that simply breathing for a single day in Dhaka is the equivalent of smoking nearly 2 cigarettes? This is not a metaphor, but the grim reality faced by more than 23 million residents every single day. Air, the very essence of life, has turned into a silent killer, lurking in every breath they take. The concentration of fine particulate matter, known as PM2.5, often ranges between 80 and 100 micrograms per cubic meter in the city, 15 times higher than the safe limit recommended by the World Health Organization, WHO. These microscopic particles, smaller than a single strand of human hair, bypass the body's natural defenses, burrow deep into the lungs, and seep directly into the bloodstream. The result is not just coughing or shortness of breath, but an increased risk of heart disease, strokes, and lung cancer. According to the World Bank, air pollution claims around 159,000 lives every year in Bangladesh, a staggering toll equal to wiping out an entire small city from the map, year after year. But cold statistics alone cannot capture the true brutality of this crisis. Step outside on a winter morning, and the city appears swallowed by a thick gray haze, where the sun is reduced to a dim orange dot in the distance. Children head to school wearing flimsy masks that offer little protection against the toxic air. The elderly wheeze and cough as they squeeze into crowded buses. And above it all, smoke stacks from aging factories spew endless plumes of black smoke, as if the very sky were being burned away. In Dhaka, breathing is no longer taken for granted. It has become a daily battle for survival. The invisible element we all rely on to sustain life has transformed into an assassin, quietly stealing years from lifespans, draining vitality and crushing hope. And when the very act of inhaling, the most fundamental rhythm of life, carries within it the seeds of death, we are forced to ask, what is the true cost of unchecked development? From this suffocating air, our journey now turns to another haunting reality. A city not only suffocated by pollution, but strangled by endless traffic congestion. Let us pause for a moment. After the three haunting images we've just witnessed, mountains of garbage, the Buriganga River reduced to a stream of death, and the poisoned air that turns every breath into a sentence, it is time to take a step back, to inhale deeply and reflect. Dhaka, in its stark reality, is not just a city. It is a mirror reflecting the world back at us. Poverty, pollution, and dying rivers do not belong to Bangladesh alone. They are warning bells tolling for all of humanity. We must ask ourselves, who are we in this picture? Why do we endlessly create, build, and expand, only to allow the very fruits of our labor to turn against us? And what legacy will we leave for those who come after us? A thriving, living planet, or a world drowning in smoke and waste? In Dhaka's shadows, one can imagine other cinematic visions. An ancient ruin lying silent beneath a canopy of stars, where the whispers of history echo in the night wind. A sacred fire ritual burning in the desert, flames casting light upon the faces of the old and the young, reminding us that humanity has always sought meaning beyond suffering. Likewise, amid the suffocating pollution and poverty, there is still a flicker of pride, resilience, and a yearning to live that refuses to be extinguished. Let this interlude be a deep breath, a slowing of the rhythm in our story, not just to dwell on horror, but to sense the quiet message hidden beneath it. Because perhaps, within the haze and dust, the answer to humanity's greatest questions is still waiting to be discovered. Number 4. Traffic chaos, the machine that kills a nation's productivity. Can you imagine a capital city where moving through its streets is slower than walking on foot? Dhaka, the bustling heart of Bangladesh, turns into a metallic labyrinth every morning. Old buses, motorcycles, rickshaws, and cars squeeze against one another, inch by inch, like a river of steel that has lost its flow. The average speed of vehicles here is a mere 5 kilometers per hour, so a trip that should take 10 minutes stretches into an hour or more. But the true suffocation comes not from the delay itself, but from the thick clouds of black exhaust that spill out from aging buses, wrapping millions of people in a toxic shroud. According to Bangladesh's Accident Research Institute, this gridlock devours nearly 10% of the country's GDP every year, amounting to billions of dollars. Behind these statistics lie countless wasted hours, factory workers arriving late to their shifts, and school children nodding off on wooden benches after grueling commutes. Yet the real cost cannot be measured in money alone. It carves itself into human minds and bodies. The relentless stress amplified by blaring horns, the pounding hearts of pedestrians pushing their way through chaotic streets, and the hidden illnesses that creep in after breathing poisoned air day after day. Dhaka is a city that continues to expand, yet in doing so, it strangles itself, like a body that grows too large to breathe. As wheels turn sluggishly through smog and noise, they do more than waste time. They grind down vitality and crush the future of millions. And when we see this endless tide of vehicles, we must ask, what becomes of a city when its traffic, the very bloodstream of urban life, clots into a deadly blockage. Our journey forward will reveal that the consequences extend far beyond the streets, reaching into homes and slums where survival itself has become a fragile trade-off. Number 5. Slums, where a roof is a luxury dream. Can you believe that in a bustling capital of more than 23 million people, countless families do not even possess a roof to shield them from the sun or rain? Over 40% of Bangladesh's urban population lives in slums, fragile settlements where life hangs by a thread, like a flickering oil lamp in the wind. Picture a chaotic maze of rusted tin sheets, rotting wood, and worn-out plastic tarps stitched together into fragile shelters. One heavy rainfall, one strong gust of wind, and everything could be swept away in an instant. Here, people do not live in homes. They live in uncertainty. This is the story of Ria, a mother of 2 whose family survives on a few square meters of sidewalk. By day, the stairway leading down to the slum is where she spreads out some cloth to sell small goods, and by night, it becomes their bedroom. Their kitchen is nothing more than a few bricks stacked together, the smoke from cooking fires blending with exhaust fumes, creating a choking haze that clings to the air. Electricity and water are not basic rights here, but commodities controlled by shadowy powers. Families tap illegally into public lines, only to buy back access at exorbitant rates. Drinking water, instead of flowing from clean pipes, comes in old plastic containers, metallic and stale with every sip. In this world, a simple roof is no longer a certainty, but a luxury dream. Every day, millions endure this cramped reality, children playing barefoot on garbage-strewn ground, their laughter in sharp contrast to the weary, hollow eyes of their parents. At night, dim kerosene lamps cast trembling shadows against thin tarpaulin walls, as if the very existence of life here is fragile and temporary. These slums are more than shelters. They are symbols of injustice, proof of the vast chasm between economic growth and human survival. Bangladesh is praised for its garment industry, for its rapid pace of urbanization, but behind those statistics lie millions of families unsure if tomorrow their roofs will still stand. The imagery resembles a haunting cinematic sequence, a drone shot sweeping over endless seas of corrugated tin roofs, a close-up of a mother clutching her child tightly in a torn shack, children running between piles of plastic waste, and the relentless sound of rain hammering down on thin, fragile metal sheets. This reality hits us hard. In a world where people debate technology, artificial intelligence, or the conquest of space, millions still do not have a safe place to sleep. And the haunting question echoes: will we leave the next generation a planet of hope, or merely an endless chain of slums stretching into the horizon? Number 6. Urban overload. When a city collapses under its own weight. What happens when a city can no longer breathe under the weight of its own existence? Dhaka, where 500,000 migrants arrive each year from rural villages carrying dreams of a better life, is transforming into a ticking time bomb. But instead of hope, those who flood into this metropolis are met with a city on the brink, every seam of its fabric stretched to breaking point. Hospitals overflow with patients, corridors turned into makeshift wards, where a single struggling breath is drowned out by groans of pain and the relentless hum of machines. Schools burst at the seams, children crammed into classrooms designed for half their number. Clean water, a basic human right, has become a rare privilege. Families queue for hours to fill plastic containers with murky liquid. The drainage system collapses under the weight of every storm, turning streets into foul lagoons where garbage and sewage float in grotesque unison, like recurring nightmares etched into the city's soul. This is the story of Arif, a young man from a poor village. He came to Dhaka chasing a future for his family, but now he finds himself trapped in a crumbling room, sharing space with 10 strangers. His back-breaking labor barely covers meager meals and a slice of rent for a suffocating slum dwelling. The dream of transformation has curdled into a daily fight for survival. By 2030, Dhaka is projected to become the world's 6th largest city, with nearly 27 million inhabitants. But such numbers are no badge of pride. They are death knells. A city that cannot sustain its own people collapses from within. And when a metropolis overloads, it is always the poorest, the weakest, who pay the first and heaviest price. The imagery plays out like a tense documentary. A drone sweeping over endless rooftops, the camera plunging into overcrowded hospitals, lingering on classrooms bursting with restless children before ending on weary faces, hollow eyes staring out, trapped with nowhere left to go. Dhaka has become like a bloated body with no heart strong enough to pump its blood. It is an urban organism devouring itself, and without change, its collapse is not a possibility, but a certainty. And we, as witnesses, must ask, is Dhaka's tragedy today not a warning for every city that grows too fast, chasing expansion while forgetting what it truly means for people to live? Number 7. Garment workers and child marriage, the hidden tragedy behind the fabric. Can you imagine that the cheap clothes sold across the globe are stitched together with the sweat and stolen childhoods of millions of women and girls in Bangladesh? The garment industry, the backbone of the nation's economy, accounts for over 80% of its export revenue. More than 4 million workers, the majority women, toil 10 to 12 hours a day in suffocating factories, cramped and poorly lit, often without access to clean drinking water. They are the very spine of Bangladesh's economy, yet paradoxically, they live on meager wages, earning up to 30% less than their male counterparts. Inside these factories, the hum of sewing machines mixes with coughs, tired eyes, and calloused hands repeating an endless cycle. But the tragedy runs deeper. Behind the shimmering fabrics shipped to the world lie stories no one dares to tell. Harassment, abuse, the silent fear etched into the faces of women as they enter the factory each day. For many, going to work is not just labor, it is an unspoken struggle for dignity. And yet Bangladesh bears another wound, more haunting still: child marriage. The country has one of the highest rates in the world. More than 51% of girls are married before the age of 18. Hasty ceremonies take place where a girl of just 13 or 14, draped in an oversized wedding shawl, lowers her eyes and steps into the role of wife and mother before she has even known childhood. Abandoned classrooms, dusty benches, and silent halls are monuments to stolen youth. The cinematic imagery is stark. Women bent over sewing machines in dim rooms, a fragile young bride wrapped in heavy cloth, and an empty classroom where vacant seats outnumber the students. This is not merely Bangladesh's story, it is a global reckoning. We may wear beautiful clothes, but can we face the truth that behind every stitch lies a stolen dream? And when those dreams are buried too long, can the future of a nation truly rise from such tattered fabric? Dhaka, the city we have just journeyed through, is not merely a place, but a living testimony to a global tragedy. We have seen mountains of garbage swallowing streets, the Buriganga River turned into a graveyard of water, air heavy with poison, traffic choking like clogged arteries, and slums where a roof is no more than a distant dream. We have met the women bent over sewing machines and the young girls robbed of their childhood in hurried marriages. Together, these fragments form the portrait of Dhaka, a metropolis teetering between survival and collapse. But this is not only the story of Bangladesh. It is a mirror held up to humanity, showing us the price we pay for unsustainable growth, for cheap clothes stitched together with sweat, tears, and stolen youth. Dhaka drowning in trash, rivers dead, and children forced to grow up too soon may only be the beginning of what awaits countless other cities across the globe if we do not change. The question remains, will we leave the next generation a planet vibrant with life, or a world consumed by new Dhakas where people are trapped in poverty, pollution, and inequality? The cinematic image lingers. A drone pulls back from Dhaka in a blood-red sunset, the fading light casting long shadows across fragile rooftops as words appear. The world cannot afford to look away. And you, the one hearing this story, are part of that change. If this journey has moved you, do not let this voice fade into silence. Share this video so more people can witness these truths. Leave a comment so the conversation can continue beyond this moment. And subscribe to Fascinating Discoveries so together we can keep exploring, reflecting, and uncovering the raw realities the world so often chooses to ignore. Because only when we face what is most painful can humanity hope to find a path toward a more sustainable future.